Welcome. My name is Sandra Corrado of Next Level Consulting. We are a wellness and fitness company. And today my guest is Michael Shuster. This is actually part two, second interview with Michael Shuster. So Michael, welcome back. Pleasure having you.
Nice to be here.
I'm glad you're here. Michael, we had a conversation a few weeks back with respect to your work as a realtor, and you have specialties. We've talked about your specialty of working with seniors and helping them go through the process of downsizing and moving, helping them go through all the different changes of, say, perhaps moving into either a smaller home or into a residence. Today, our topic is with respect to divorce, because that is your other specialty. And so I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about your work in this particular area. Now, for the benefit of those that haven't seen part one, and by the way, those of you that are tuning in for the first time, make sure you see part one, because you'll have a chance to see more about Michael, his expertise, and maybe you know someone that needs that service. So you need to contact Michael. Michael, can you tell us a little bit about why you became a realtor? What drew you to the field?
Sure. To make a very long story very short, when I came out of university, I was intrigued with understanding people. I ended up starting an HR company, helping companies hire for job fit. Not is Sandra a good person, but would Sandra be good for this role? Would she be productive, come in on time, not steal, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't enjoy business to business. It wasn't rewarding for me, in personal types of ways. So I got out of that, and I was in my late 20s. You could buy real estate for, $250,000 in the suburbs. So I was just, as a real estate investor, I was just a young kid flipping properties. And I had so many bad experiences with realtors that ultimately I became one. And that's not to say I'm the only good realtor, or there are no other good realtors, or all realtors are bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying at the time, I was fortunate enough to have some bad experiences, and I thought we can do better. And I invested over $100,000 over a few years in learning things that the Real Estate Association doesn't teach realtors about investment properties, real estate, and things like that. So I had all of this education that I paid extra for and went out and got. So I got my real estate license thinking I would just work with investors. And as the economy changed, prices skyrocketed. I didn't know, excuse me, a lot of people that could afford multiple properties at any given time. But, part of my story was combining understanding people with adding value and genuinely caring about people. I didn't choose to become a seniors real estate specialist. I didn't choose to become a divorce specialist. They say everything happens for a reason. And I won't get into the details, but with divorce in this particular topic, somebody asked me if I could help their friend. It was a very, very complicated divorce, which probably will serve as some answers that I'll share with you today. So it just became something that I fell into, and I ran with it.
Mm-hmm. And obviously you have the background because of your work in investing and also human resources. You have so many different skills that were conducive to helping your client. And because we've known each other, we met each other at a networking function, and stayed connected over the years from 2010. I know that you are, authentic, and I also know that you are a person of integrity. So, I can see how, you would be of service to individuals going through the divorce process, because it's a very delicate situation to go through, and you need someone to be honest in that case, and to guide the client through, because there's already delicate emotions coming up. So you're the perfect person to help out.
Thank you.
So in your experience, what are the 5 most common mistakes that couples make when choosing a realtor to sell their marital home while they're going through the divorce process?
Okay, so you want me to narrow it to five? Okay, I'm going to start, and let's keep track when we get to five.
Sure.
Okay, the first one I would say, this is one of the most popular mistakes, is not choosing a realtor just because your spouse found them, recommended them, or your spouse's lawyer recommended them.
Mm.
And the reason a lot of spouses, will say, well, I don't trust the realtor because you found them, or you talked to them first, or you know them, or whatever have you. They think the realtor is going to pick sides. And really what they don't, realtors can't pick sides. Really if you peel that proverbial onion, what is human nature is people who are not specifically trained in certain areas will pick the path of least resistance. That's human nature. And so what'll happen is, and part of what I shared about how I got into this and my history, it's about understanding people. And if you're not people don't like conflict. They like the path of least resistance. So if you're not trained in how to de-escalate things or deal with different personalities or high conflict personalities, here's what'll happen. You list a house, two spouses probably are not getting along at some point in the process. And if one spouse is trying to manipulate the realtor, and even though I maintain they can't, but if they try to influence or manipulate the realtor, what some realtors might do if they're not trained in this is they'll just send emails, or they'll contact the spouse that is less confrontational, the spouse that is easier to get along with, and then just, because they want to avoid conflict, and they'll just say, well, you speak to your husband and wife and let them know. Well, that's the exact opposite. You can't do that in a divorce, especially in an acrimonious divorce. And most divorces, even if they start off amicable and friendly, at some point tension rises for every one of them. So the first mistake is not trusting a realtor. You don't even look at their credentials. It's just, well, you found them, so no way. And they'll end up spending thousands of dollars on lawyers to fight over realtors for the wrong reasons.
Wow.
The other thing that people forget is, or may not realize, is when you go through divorce, if you hire your lawyer, with the exception of a mediator, but I'm going to stay on topic here, with a family law lawyer, your financial advisor, financial planner, accountant, your therapist, any of the professionals that you hire all work for you and not your spouse. They can't talk to your spouse. They have strict confidentiality. The realtor is the only professional where effectively you're both my client in a divorce. And so I owe you both my fiduciary duties, my integrity, my honesty, my professionalism. So the first biggest mistake is people forget that and don't realize it. It can be a mistake that some realtors make if they don't specialize in divorce, that they forget that. So they choose the path of least resistance. So that would be number one. Not trusting a realtor because they think the realtor is going to make a deal with your soon-to-be ex under the table. Realtor can't make a deal under the table. Why? Realtors don't handle the money. It's the real estate lawyer that handles the money. We sell your house, and when the sale closes, the buyer's real estate lawyer sends the money to the seller's real estate lawyer. I don't handle a single penny. So I can't choose to give your soon-to-be ex more than he or she deserves, or rip you off, or do anything like that. So there's no reason to think we can make a deal under the table. And for the same, or along the same lines rather, something else that's becoming more common is when spouses fight over realtors, they each want their own realtor. So you remember a few minutes ago, I just said they have their own professionals. I've had several divorce sales in the last couple of years where one spouse insists on me and the other spouse insists on someone else because spouse A found me.
Wow.
And so they'll pick their own realtor. Well, you don't need two realtors. You're just increasing the amount of commission you have to pay. But here's why that's not in your best interest. One realtor is still doing all the work. We don't handle the money. It goes on MLS by one brokerage. If I partner with another realtor, we agree that one of us is putting the listing on MLS under our brokerage, and we're doing the marketing, we're doing everything. The other realtors basically, I mean, no offense by this, but they're just a babysitter. They're just a go-between person to talk to, and you're paying them a lot of money to not do real estate. So you don't need two realtors to sell your house because you can trust one. Similarly, you don't need two real estate lawyers because that question can come up next. Here's a little secret for you. I can't give legal advice, but I can give you advice that I've learned along the way. So now I've just shared that the money goes into the real estate lawyer's trust account. And ordinarily in a happy marriage, or when there's not a marriage involved, the real estate lawyer will just issue the seller a check after they get the money. The simple way to make sure no spouse gets more or less than they deserve is you advise even if your soon-to-be ex picks the real estate lawyer, don't fight over it. If they pick the real estate lawyer and you got to pick your battles, just send the real estate lawyer written direction. So there's a paper trail, email, that this is a divorce sale and the money is to be held in trust until there's only two conditions that they can release money to anybody. One, court order. You can never defy a court order. But if there's a court order, both spouses are going to know about it. And then the most common way is once there's a separation agreement that is agreed upon, the separation agreement must be signed by both spouses and both family law lawyers. When the real estate lawyer gets that separation agreement from the family law lawyers, they will dispense the money according to the agreement. So if I sum that all up for everyone, no one can make a deal under the table. No one can pay more money to one spouse over the other. No one can be manipulated. And by the way, the other thing is a realtor, if one spouse and one realtor wanted to kind of join forces, for lack of a better definition, you couldn't push through a sale of a matrimonial property without the other spouse knowing about it, because on all real estate forms, listing agreements, price changes, amendments, any and all real estate documents have a special line for signature that's called spousal consent. And if it's a marital property, you need the spousal consent or the sale's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. So not trusting the realtor because you think they're going to make a deal under the table is mistake number 2. So we said 5. Number 3, not interviewing properly and asking the right questions to determine qualifications. So this is something I recall we talked about and I shared in our in session 1 with when seniors are hiring a seniors real estate specialist, they don't know what questions to ask or what red flags to look out for. So I shared a little bit about that. And I did mention in that talk, I wrote a book called Choose Your Realtor Carefully, which isn't you should hire Michael Shuster, because it's an educational, informative book about how to interview, what questions to ask, and what would be good answers and what would be bad answers. So along those lines, if we apply that to divorce, you're going through divorce. It's an emotional roller coaster for you. You may not be thinking clearly. And even if you were, what questions are you going to ask? You don't just want a realtor that sells a lot of houses or condos. So here's, a couple of questions that you should ask, whether you interview me or anybody else, is how many divorce sales have you done, over the last X number of years? Now, if a realtor says, oh, lots. Okay, here's a trick in interviewing. Never accept a general answer. That's just a I get out of jail free type of thing. I would, if they say, oh, 80 or a lot, then, I might say, well, how many? Because you can see if I've sold, between 70 or 80 homes, I'm going to tell you 70, 80 homes. If I say a lot, it means either I haven't done a lot or I'm not paying attention to detail and numbers. So realtors know what their productivity is. The other thing is if they say, a reasonable number, so question part B or C, if you will, is what are some of the obstacles you've encountered in previous divorce sales? And they should be able to share specific details so that you may not know if that's right or wrong, but if they're making it up or if they're telling you the truth. And then when they say, well, I've seen this happen and I've seen that happen, Really, Sandra? How did you deal with that? So the key when you're hiring or interviewing for the job of a realtor is ask questions they didn't prepare for, ask questions where they should know the answers, and then follow up with a question that they're not expecting. So not interviewing properly and hiring on credentials for a divorce sale would be mistake number 3, in my opinion. Number 4, hiring on based on commission, which most people do, but let's just talk about divorce sales for a minute. So like I just said, you need a realtor. There's some realtors out there that just keep the real estate license, you know, in case their aunt, uncle, sister, brother, neighbor sell a house. They think, well, I can make a lot of money on the side. So I don't want to get into that, but I would say, okay, let me know next time you need a root canal if you want to go to a part-time dentist.
Good
So,
point.
right? Or
Yep.
if you get framed or arrested for a crime you didn't commit, do you want a part-time lawyer? I don't even think there is such a thing. So like anything else, you want a professional who is full-time in the business, has a consistent track record of success. So now when you get into the divorce, commission is the least of your priority, should be the least of your priorities. You want somebody with unique communication skills, because now you're dealing not just with a happy couple or a happy single person. You're dealing with people that can't communicate well between each other in most cases, people who might be being irrational because of emotions, which gets in the way of all good decision making at any point in life. And like I said earlier, I have to communicate with both spouses equally and fairly. And there are more than 50% of the divorce sales where they can't be in the same room together at the same time. One's moved out, and I have to have separate conversations in separate places with each. So they always have to be the same conversations, no choosing sides, but I have to be able to communicate effectively with each person, which comes down to communication skills. Take that one step further, negotiation skills. Now, a lot of people think negotiating is just about the dollars and money when an offer is received. But if you think about it, I'm negotiating with my clients in divorce sales, not trying to out negotiate them, trying to foster good decisions and good communication. So very often, if I had $1 for every time this comes up, I'd be retired. Very often, people will do something totally illogical just to spite their soon-to-be ex, or just because their family, friends, people who are wishing them well and trying to help are chirping in their ear, don't accept this, don't agree to that, and they're not trying to fuel the fire. They are genuinely trying to help someone they care about, but if they're not trained in this, they're actually fueling the fire. So people will say, yeah, you know what? My friend Sandra cares about me. She said her friend did this and there's no way I should do that. Okay, let's focus on the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's focus on what's the house worth, what's fair market value, what's the offer, how interested are the buyers, what's the highest we can negotiate this. Forget about your soon-to-be ex and what your family's telling you and what his or her family's telling you. So you need good negotiating skills to deal with two different personalities where one might be more hostile than the other. And then the other part of that you touched on and I appreciate, by the way, the nice things you said about me, you need compassion, you need empathy, whether you're dealing with seniors and in this case with divorce. And by the way, compassion and empathy are two different things for some people who may not know that. You know, compassion is if Sandra's going through a hard time, I feel bad for Sandra, but I can't necessarily relate because I haven't been through that. Empathy is I have compassion, feel bad for Sandra, but I can actually say, been there, done that, and I know exactly how you feel. And by the way, I have been through my own acrimonious divorce, just for the record. So I don't just understand the business part of it. I understand the emotions that people go through. I wanted to keep it amicable and avoid lawyers, you know, for the kids' sake, but sometimes we make decisions and other people have different ideas. So commission should be the least of your priorities when you're hiring an individual to sell for most people, your single largest asset. And you know what, when I'm talking about commission or money, One thing an accountant said to me, I love this phrase, is don't be a penny wise, but a pound foolish. And so, I've had sellers say to me, we're getting divorced, and so we need all the money we can get. Without being a smart aleck here, I'm going to ask you, who doesn't? I've never had any happy couples say, we're very comfortable here, so we're going to take whatever we can get. So, if you hire an agent, I mean, there are some real estate agents out there that, whether on their postcards or their vehicles, they advertise that they'll discount, 0.5% or 1% less. So let me just use some real numbers here, because when I show this, people really go, oh, I never thought of that. If you have $1 million home, which is a little less than the average price in the GTA, but let's just use $1 million for a round number. If a realtor says, you know what, Sandra, you're going through divorce, I feel, I'm going to take off 1%. You say, okay, well, we're saving $10,000 on commission. But you've just out negotiated the professional that you're hiring to negotiate for you the sale of your largest asset. So now how do you feel about their negotiation skills? The other thing is, if they can't sell their own value, then they're not going to sell the value of your house. They're going to get the first offer they get. They're going to say, Sandra, I think this is a good offer. You should take it.
Makes
Especially,
sense.
right? Especially if two spouses are impossible to deal with, or one is irrational. If a realtor isn't trained on how to handle this, or they're discounting their commissions because they don't know how to negotiate and deal with people, they say, you know what, we got this offer. Trust me, it's a good offer. Let's get this deal done. And so they don't understand how to negotiate value, and they don't have negotiation skills. So you might think, yeah, but I'm saving $10,000. But what if, as a twice certified negotiator, for example, I could get $50,000 or $75,000 or $80,000 more for the sale when that offer first started? You list your house at $1 million, and someone offers $925. An agent that doesn't know how to negotiate says, I think $925 is a good offer. Maybe we can get $935. All I have to get that offer higher is $10,000 to $945. And you haven't saved 1%. You've broken even. But what if I get $965 or $985 or full price? All of that money goes in the seller's pocket. So the point is I'm not here to make fun of people. I'm here to use real dollars and cents. You think you're saving 1% or 0.5%. You're actually leaving tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table for the buyers. So that's what I mean by don't think macro, not micro. Don't be a penny wise, pound foolish.
That makes sense. And especially if I can interject for a moment, what you're offering, the specialty that you have, like the inside knowledge, the compassion, the guidance. Typically, if the spouse were to go to, say, relationship counseling, there is a cost involved in that. Although you're not offering counseling, but you have to be kind of like a counselor to guide every step of the way, deal with anything that comes up. There's the education process. Like I would say, you're worth your weight in your commission, because it's not that you're just handling a sale. And I don't want to diminish the value of a realtor, but you're offering specialized guidance here. Right. And you're dealing with two different parties with possibly two different missions. You're negotiating with the potential buyers, and you're also negotiating with both spouses. Right. There's a lot of wisdom, experience that goes into this. So I can see, the specialty that you have, the experience that you have, like you're worth your weight in gold, right? Because this is not easy. Like going through divorce process is a challenging process, but when you're having to deal with two parties that may not see eye to eye, and yes, you mentioned that, it may start off and they're, pretty agreeable, but at a certain point, and especially I find when money is involved, all of a sudden everyone is trying to kind of pull back, or there's, even if they want to be nice, so to speak, or generous, at a certain point, it's like, well, no, I deserve this, or I deserve this. Like it's wanting to hold on to something that they believe is rightfully theirs. So it would take someone that is very skilled to manage the expectations and the desires of both people.
Mhm.
And that in itself is like requires a lot of experience
Well,
and
thank
delicacy.
you. Thank you very much for acknowledging that. You know, you just said touched on a couple of points. As like I said, I've been twice trained, certified in negotiating, and up until COVID, I used to teach it.
Mm-hmm.
Rule number one, you must take out all emotion in negotiating and in anything. Whether you're trying to get your kids to listen to you or your parents to listen to you, or the sale of a house or the selling your car privately, you have to take out emotion. The other thing, going back to understanding people, the other biggest thing that gets in the way of any human being making logical decisions is fear. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like you touched on, going through divorce, and especially, I mean, if you're independently wealthy, it's not about how much money I can get out of this. It's about not letting your soon-to-be ex get as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But for most people who aren't independently wealthy, most of the money they're getting out of the settlement to move on and or buy their next house or pay the rent or whatever they're doing is out of the sale of their house.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're in panic mode, they're in fear mode. So you combine fear and emotion, it's a recipe for disaster. And so, yeah, you know, going back to what you said, I appreciate you saying that I'm worth my weight in gold, you know, and it's not, oh, you know, I'm a realtor and like everybody else, I want to make as much as possible and think that. You're absolutely right. There's an old saying, don't get paid for what you do, get paid for what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think this isn't a self-entitlement thing where I think to myself, I know a lot of stuff, and so I deserve to be paid, you know, my full fees. It's specifically, I hope people like me and trust me and want to work with me. But really, what you have to ask yourself is, what are you getting for your money? And
Mm-hmm.
what you're getting is more money in your pocket. You
Mm-hmm.
know, going back to the $1 million house analogy that I use, doesn't matter what I think I'm worth. Although I appreciate your kind words, I'm going to put more money in your pocket than someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And if I take money out of that for just a minute, the other thing that when I apply my negotiating skills and understanding people and managing fear and managing different personalities, high conflict personalities, here's a statistic that I've seen a lot of, but I don't know anybody that, calculates it or shares this. People don't know how many divorce sales die on the table on closing day, which
Oh.
means a realtor that wasn't trained didn't get the right signatures in some cases, or between the sale and the closing date, somebody's gotten in the way and interfered and complicated, and it's delayed, and then the buyers walk and then people are suing each other. So not only do you need your house sold if you need the money out of it, people don't put a price on emotional well-being, which directly correlates, as I know you know this, to
Mm-hmm.
physical well-being. And so, I've often said to people, you can sell this today for fair market value or this, whatever the specific price is, or you can fight and dig your heels in to spite somebody. And you're not only going to end up getting less for the house potentially, because if it's on the market longer, but if you add 6 months to your litigation, what does that add up to? So people don't, again, look at the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and by the way, um, when you talk about the value, not only do I apply my skills and knowledge to selling the house, negotiating, and real estate, but I've helped people save fortunes of money with their divorce lawyers, not because I give divorce legal advice, but one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen people make is using their family law lawyer as a therapist. Because
Mm.
people call me, you said this, I think, a minute ago or 2 minutes ago when you started talking about this. It's not a joking matter, but I've said to some people, tongue in cheek, when people call me, generally people call me And either they've seen my YouTube videos or they've heard about me, or I was interviewed on Rogers TV. So they've seen me somewhere and they call me up and they say, I'm thinking about leaving my ex, or my ex cheated on me, or we're just not in love anymore, or whatever it is. They're not ready to sell their house or their condo. They're not even for a year in most cases or more. They're just thinking about, or my spouse just told me they're done with the marriage, or we decided to do this amicably a month ago and now things are getting messy. That's usually when I get the call. And so they don't need a realtor for a long time. But so what they do is they end up unloading all of their emotional stuff, because lawyers are paid by the hour, therapists are paid by the hour, realtors are
True.
not.
True.
And you're not going to work with anybody unless they are genuinely compassionate and empathetic. So people have shared things with me that you wouldn't believe. And you wouldn't believe it because it's not my title, my profession. But they know I will help them save money on a lawyer, or help them save money. In some cases, they'll spend a small fortune on therapists when really what they need is a divorce coach for less cost. And I know some of the best divorce coaches. I always say, you know what? I'll use your name as an example. Sandra,
Sure.
if you're going to your lawyer, don't tell them how your soon-to-be ex is a piece of junk, because they don't care. They just need to give you legal advice. Go to them and say, here's what the situation is. What do we need to do next? And you turn 3 hours at $600 into 1 hour, So going back to don't be a penny wise, pound foolish. I know we're a little bit off real estate here for a minute, but I like to help people.
Yeah.
Penny wise, pound foolish. When we were talking about real estate commission or real estate fees, same thing applies to lawyers' rates. And so, having done this for about almost, I guess it's 10 years now. Last week was 10 years. The divorce specialty, I've met hundreds and hundreds of family law lawyers in the GTA. And without saying anything bad about anybody, if I ever had to go through divorce again, or recommend to any of my clients or people that call me, there's one, maybe two that I would hire myself or recommend, for not because others aren't good, some are, some aren't, but because they have the whole package, the thorough knowledge of the law, combined with high skills in dealing with people, personalities, negotiating skills, combined with not integrity, not running the billable clock that some lawyers do. And excuse me. And so people have said to me, do you know a good lawyer? Absolutely. So I'll say, I know the best. And they say, well, how much are they? Because my neighbor recommended a lawyer that charges $400 an hour, and I'm not, and I don't want to pay $600 an hour or whatever. Well, my point is that what if the lawyer that costs $600 an hour gets your divorce finalized in 8 months? And the lawyer, for example, and the lawyer that charges $400 an hour takes 3 years of litigation, because they're just shuffling papers back and forth with the other side, or they don't know how to negotiate. So again, look at the big picture. You might be paying $200 more an hour, but if you get it done 2 years sooner, you might end up saving $50,000, $100,000 in legal fees.
Yep.
So
and saving a lot of stress too.
And stress, emotional well-being, which leads to physical well-being.
Exactly. Yeah. Because as soon as we start going through the stress process, the cortisol level starts to rise.
Right.
And there's a whole series of things that start to happen. And everyone reacts differently to when the stress levels start to rise. Some people, go into gaining weight and eating lots of food. Others may not be able to eat lots of food, but for whatever reason, their body is like, it's storing because it's emotion. By doing, by paying a little bit more for a lawyer that is knowledgeable, such as, spending time with you at your rate, because you know the process and you're looking at the overall picture, you're saving time and also saving emotion, so that you can get to your goal of selling the home or dealing with the lawyer, but then you can move on. You're saving time, and all that stress and the everything that goes along with it. So I definitely see the value in your bigger picture knowing, and also the fact that you can offer recommendations that are tried and true. It's not just the shuffling of the paper. It's not just a suggestion that's off the cuff. It's, I've been through this. I understand. And my aim is to get you through this as quickly as possible. However, also making sure that we take care of you both. And that's what I see and hear coming from you.
Yeah. I remember 9 or 10 years ago when I was going through my own divorce, and as a negotiator, I thought I could negotiate my own deal before we got lawyers involved, and not, and when I say negotiate, I mean fairly. And like I said earlier, she had different ideas. And so I'd already moved out of the house we were in, and I was with somebody, and I was, it was summer and we were having a glass of wine, and I was stressed, and I was getting migraine headaches and my back pains that I didn't have, and pains in my joints, my knees, and things like that. And I was complaining to somebody. I said, I can't believe I negotiate $1 million deals and I can't negotiate this. And that person said two things to me that I've never forgotten, and I've shared with hundreds of clients. You can't negotiate this because you're emotionally involved.
Yeah.
And that's when I took a step back and I said, true. And the other thing that this person said, because that particular day, my ex sent me an email of some demand, and I went through the roof. And this person said to me, after they said you're emotionally involved, they said, this isn't the mountain to die on. Pick your battles. And when people are going through divorce, whether it's self-entitlement, or you took a Tony Robbins course, or you just believe in, I deserve this, and people deserve to be healthy. People deserve to be happy. Yeah. People deserve to be paid fairly or get a fair settlement in a divorce. Absolutely. But don't just fight over the little things, because it adds up to lawyer fees, therapy fees, health, and you can't put a price on that.
Very true.
How much does it cost for physical therapy? And for a therapist or a psychologist, the $200 in legal fees is going to end up costing you a lot more in other professional fees.
Very true. Yep. Very true. Yep. So I have another question that's, listening to the 5 biggest mistakes. I didn't realize there was so much there. I mean, I know divorce. I think that was 5. Yeah. Divorce can be very complicated, but having heard everything that you've mentioned, and it's only 5 of so many others. Yeah. Wow. Like it's amazing. The insight that you have.
Thank you, Sandra. If you're not going to forget your next question, I just wanted to add to this.
Yeah.
During COVID, in the first year of COVID, a lot of people said there's going to be a lot of divorces and a lot of babies after this pandemic. And I got a phone call from a realtor because I'm based in more central Toronto, Richmond Hill, Thornhill, GTA. I got a phone call from a realtor in Burlington. And said, I found you on the internet. I see you specialize in divorce. That's got to be a gold mine. Will you teach me what you know? And I said, absolutely not. I said, it's not a gold mine. In fact, in most, if not all cases, I spend more time, and sometimes there's stress, dealing with these scenarios than the seniors, or a first-time buyer, or, a happy couple going to a bigger home. I do this because I care, because I've been through it myself, and because, I say although there are guidelines from the real estate, boards about what we can and can't say in advertising, a realtor can't say they are, certain types of an area specialist or an expert in certain things. There are restrictions around certain things. But when I say I'm a divorce real estate specialist, it's not a fancy tagline or a fancy title, meaning I just want to sell more matrimonial homes in a divorce, like this person from Burlington called me. It's, as we've talked about for the last, 30 minutes and so on, I genuinely have specific knowledge that the Real Estate Association doesn't teach realtors. That makes me a specialist in this category. And by the way, I'm not throwing the Real Estate Association under the bus. It's just divorce has been on such an uprise in the last few years, and it changes so rapidly that their job is to teach us real estate, not family law and things like that. So to no fault of their own, I'm constantly, because I'm doing this day in and day out, working with the lawyers and the divorce coaches and the therapists. That's where I'm getting my specialized knowledge. So I don't teach realtors how to make lots of money. And sometimes I make less money on a divorce sale than on other sales. It's not about the money, as you know me and you know you can relate. It's about helping people, good, honest people, stay healthy and be treated fairly.
Yeah. Again, what I'm hearing is that you're offering a lot of guidance. It's not a simple case of I'm going to be listing this MLS and then dealing with some offers. There's a lot of guidance that you offer, and that takes time. And you're dealing with two individuals, guiding both. So that does take time. So I totally get it. So my next question is, how can a spouse interfere with the sale?
Okay, so great question. So I said at great length earlier, they can't manipulate a realtor, but they can interfere with a sale. I'm thinking, so here's one example. Lawyer calls me, I'm referring a client to you. His client was the husband in this divorce. Husband calls me, I go meet the husband at the house. Wife has moved out. And as circumstances would have it, the wife's father happens to be a billionaire, literally. He's a developer in town, so I happen to know of him. And so he was in a position where his daughter's unhappy, bought her another house. He bought the house they were in, said, get out of this bad situation, take the kids, I'll buy you another house. So he could. Anyways, I meet with the husband, and he deserves an Oscar for his performance. He won me over in the beginning. The glossy eyes, and I can't believe this is happening, and feel sorry for me. And another thing as a divorce specialist is I don't choose sides, but as a compassionate person, when I see somebody hurting, you want to give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove you wrong. And so I didn't know the wife, or the soon-to-be ex, didn't meet with her yet. He wanted to meet me first. So I go see the house, tell him what I think it's worth. I hear his sob story. He actually said to me, I'm not even divorcing my wife. I'm divorcing my father-in-law, because to somebody who can afford it, you can drop $200,000-$300,000 on a realtor just so nobody takes it. Sorry, realtor, on a lawyer, just so nobody takes advantage of your little girl. So, and he was doing that. It was dad's mission to destroy this guy.
Wow.
So, well, wait, the story gets better. So basically, I list the house. They moved out, the mother, and actually there was a restraining order. He couldn't be alone with his kids. So I don't know the details, not my business, not my area of expertise. He's in the house. Kids can only come once a month for a supervised visit. Okay. The reason that's relevant is this guy's alone in the house. So I have it on the market for about a week to 10 days. Buyers, agents are booking showings. I'm getting appointments and I'm getting feedback, but we're not getting any offers. And I'm following up for feedback, but we're not getting offers. Anyways, I get a phone call from a buyer, says, I'd like to see this house, and I don't have an agent, which means I take them. We don't give strangers the keys to a house. If they don't have their own realtor, then I take them to show them my listing.
Makes sense.
I walked into this house and my jaw dropped. So how can the spouse interfere with the sale? Crayons on the wall, the little son's toy trains and train tracks and play cars and things all over the living room floor.
Oh my.
Dirty plates and dishes on. I mean, this is not somebody who wants to sell his house and make it look showroom ready. This is somebody who wants to sabotage the sale.
Right.
Why? When your father-in-law is a billionaire and bought you the house, probably pays for the property taxes and other stuff. And I mean, really, effectively, you're living for free. So let me ask you something, Sandra. If you could live for free, would you want to? Now, you wouldn't break the rules. You wouldn't do things that are unethical, but he didn't want the house to be sold. He wanted to hire me because he thought he could manipulate me and sabotage the sale so that he could stay there longer, because he had to go out and support himself. So he tried to so basically I called the lawyer because the lawyer referred him to me. I said, listen, I don't want to go against you because I appreciate the referral, but the other side is going to find out about this. I'm going to be asked to testify. So I'm giving you a heads up to deal with this because I'm not picking sides. I got to get the house sold. That's my job.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way. I had, just real quick, I had another guy in Aurora. Wife calls me, we meet, and she says he's a narcissist, he's controlling and this and that and blah, blah, blah. He's in the house. She couldn't take it. Her family had no money, so she was living with her parents because she was afraid to be there. And I meet this guy again, the fake tears, I'm the victim, et cetera, et cetera. And so we list that, and there was a court order that said he could not interfere with the sale of the house. Well, that's pretty loosely written. I've actually seen some court orders where I've said to the lawyers, you got to go back because you can't enforce this. Anyways, we list the house, and I tell my secretary who books all the appointments, send an email in divorce, send equal and fair communication to both spouses. That's my duty. So whenever there's a showing, Mr. or Mrs. X, get an email. There's a showing tomorrow at 2:00. There's a showing tomorrow at 4:00. Doesn't matter if somebody's moved out. If it's a matrimonial home, you're both my clients and you're both entitled to know everything. So the wife calls me a week later and says, how come there are no showings? I said, so-and-so, we've had 38 showings in 6 days. She said, I haven't gotten a single email. Do you think he changed your instructions with your office? I said, not possible. My office wouldn't do anything without me approving it. So I go to my secretary. I said, on such and such an address, did anybody change my instructions? She said, yeah, on such and such a date, he called and said, take her off.
Oh my. Oh my.
Now, so there's a learning lesson in there. How do we, A, he interfered. B, like I said a few minutes ago, in real estate, the reason things aren't taught is because things change by the day. That had never come up before. So part of me wanted to discipline my staff and say, you can't do this. But then I thought to myself really quickly, they're not trained in what I'm trained in. This person that I was speaking to on the computer was in her 20s and never married. So she doesn't even know anything about divorce, much less she doesn't have a real estate license. Not her fault. What I learned and what I teach other realtors when they have a divorce sale is you should advise, lesson learned, advise your staff. Nobody makes a change to my listing instructions or anything unless I approve it. Because I'm the expert in this and it's my reputation on the line.
Right.
So there's been lots of different ways where, especially with narcissists, but generally if one spouse doesn't want to move, is afraid to move, doesn't want the marriage to end, there are ways where you can sabotage showings, and there are ways where you can sabotage a deal when an offer is received.
And what is the biggest mistake that couples make with their mortgage when they're going through a divorce?
Don't stop paying. So I've seen this often is what really surprises me is when people do have a high net worth and a multi-million-dollar property. And again, they will do, it's not the mountain to die on. So I had one scenario where spouse one is the higher income earner, paying the mortgage, moves out, continues to put the money in the joint account that the mortgage payments come out of. And to spite spouse A, spouse B, for the house is sold, 90-day closing. In those 3 months, spouse A is putting money into the joint account for the bank to withdraw every 2 weeks or every month. Spouse B takes the money out to spite spouse A. Meanwhile, the mortgage is going into arrears.
Oh my goodness.
A significantly negatively impacted both of their credit ratings. If it goes for 3 months or more, the bank can force power of sale. But once you get the sale closes, you're either going to buy a place or rent a place. Either way, you need a high credit rating. And killed the credit rating. So so someone says, well, why should I pay the mortgage, or well, here's why. Because in a divorce, again, I can't give legal advice, but I've learned some things from lawyers and from my own courses. There's something called an equalization payment. And in the end, everything works out exactly according to the law. So if I sold a house, I don't know how many months ago, or it was a $2.8 million house, two professionals, own the house, and one was paying the majority of the bills, a dentist. And so she says to me, it was the wife, and she says to me, he's not paying for this and he's not paying for that. $2.8 million house and making a good income, and says, the buyers want us to fix that. It's conditional on spec. The buyers want us to fix this, and he's not contributing to the mortgage. And so, the sale closes in a month and it's going to cost me an extra $800 or whatever it was. And I said, pay it. She says, well, that's not fair. I said, well, when you pay it, you tell your lawyer, because you don't have a separation agreement finalized yet.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen is your husband's going to end up paying for half of that. No one should pay for the entire part of it. It's split 50-50. You pay it all, and then his half is deducted from the amount you pay in a settlement. Or if he's paying you, which in this case wasn't the case, but if he's paying you, you're going to get that much more. If you're paying him, you're going to pay that much less. Everything is equalized in the end between the family lawyers. So the equalization payment is a fancy word for how much each spouse gets in the settlement.
Mm-hmm.
So don't let the mortgage go into arrears, because even if you have to pay it because your soon-to-be ex is a piece of work, then their half will be reimbursed to you in the end.
Wow, great advice. And again, that's where you have someone that's trying to spite or get after someone, but really both are paying. Mm-hmm. Both are paying and being harmed by, this action of spite. Wow.
Right.
Ooh, this has been very enlightening. I never realized there was this much, I'm going to call it drama, and that you are negotiating through. I mean, mm-hmm. and so I'm going to highlight, this is a reason why you want to go to a professional that has this type of experience, mm-hmm. because this is not taught. Right. This is through years of experience. You're drawing from your experience in human resources, all your schooling, because you said you spent about $100,000 in extra training.
Yeah.
Negotiation.
That's a real number. Yeah. A real number. Yeah.
And I mean, not every realtor has this skill set at all.
Right.
And yeah.
And a lot of these cases, like that some of the examples I've shared with you are just a couple of hundred. I didn't see them coming. In any scenario, when a curveball comes up and a hurdle comes up, sometimes you don't see them, and there's more in divorce than estate sales or anything else. Mm-hmm. That's where I learned. I don't say, okay, I don't know what to do. I call the family lawyer, or I call this expert or that expert, and we figure it out. And then I add that to my list of here's what to do next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I've even touched on a couple of cases where somebody's divorcing a narcissist, which typically interferes with sales and things like that. So, mm-hmm. I was going to say funny enough, but there's nothing funny about it. Narcissism, if I may chat about that.
Go right ahead. And maybe you can, because not everyone understands the definition of, or even, what does it look like to deal with someone who's a narcissist? Because I get that in my coaching. Mm-hmm. And the word has been coming up in literature all over the place. And it just seems that like the last year, I'm seeing it pop. In my coaching sessions, I get it a lot. Narcissist. Yeah. So maybe you can educate a little bit so that people know, again, what you are working with when you're dealing with a narcissist.
Absolutely. And great point. So, to that point, there are generic terms out there. For many of us, when we say Kleenex, we mean tissue. Mm-hmm. When we say Xerox, we mean photocopy. And narcissist has become a generic term to define anybody who doesn't play nice in the sandbox or doesn't get along well, mm-hmm. or, especially in divorce. Well, in a divorce process, most people become difficult at some point or another. Doesn't mean they're a narcissist. So in my extra training, so it was October 2019, just before COVID, I went to the States. The National Association of Divorce Professionals offered this certified divorce specialist training. So I paid money. I went down there for 4 days and I took this course, and it was all about, it was a divorce specialist. designation, if you will. And 1 full day was on NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. So while
Wow.
I'm not a mental health professional, I spent a day learning about NPD. And when I looked at it through my lenses versus others, it's how the heck do you negotiate with a narcissist? How do you de-escalate a narcissist? So to answer your questions, a narcissist is not somebody who's self-entitled or somebody who's difficult. There are actually, if I recall, 18 characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder. Some people have 1 or 2. Some people can have 18 or anything in between. There's also a scale or a spectrum, or however you want to describe it, where people can have a couple of characteristics that are mild right through to extreme. So you have to be able to identify that, but it is definitely coming up more often than not. By the way, I'm not a mental health professional, so I'm just going to say what I did learn is NPD is not in the genes. It's usually a result of your upbringing. It's usually a result. I could go on and on, but that's not the topic of this conversation. But what I learned about in your early years, your childhood or your preteens and things like that, things happened that cause and effect. So I'll leave it at that.
Trauma and coping mechanism. And at the time, it's the behavior became a way of managing whatever was going on in the household. And that's the reason we bring this into our adulthood. We don't even realize it.
Right.
So,
and it could be, excuse me, it could be anything from as simple as just not ever getting somebody's approval that was important to you to downright verbal, physical, emotional abuse. So large, absolutely. Yeah. So here's, without spending an hours on NPD, here's how I'll tell you that it for educational purposes and as it applies to real estate, because, again, talking about value, I've helped some clients save a lot of money. And I've also helped, because just like realtors aren't taught certain things, lawyers aren't taught. Lawyers are taught the law. Some lawyers are great negotiators, many are not. And some lawyers are good negotiators, but aren't trained in NPD. So I've actually worked with some lawyers to help them facilitate a settlement for some mutual clients of ours. So here's what everybody needs to remember or know or understand about a narcissist. They don't want closure. You're never going to talk reason with them to get a settlement. We should sell the house because for this amount, or here's what our settlement should be and what's fair. There's nothing logical, or they don't want a settlement. For a narcissist, it's all about control. And so you can tell your lawyer you don't agree with something that the other lawyer said, but you can't control your lawyer and you can't control the other side because you don't deal with them. You only deal with your own lawyer. Realtor, you can try to control, because the realtor, they're both my client. And while the law dictates the equalization process, the financial settlement, there are laws about custody, all the things that you should talk to your lawyer about, not necessarily myself. When it comes to the house, that's where both spouses try to flex their muscle and interfere, because they do have control. They have control over what the listing price is. I can only recommend. They have control over how much they accept. And if one wants to accept, the other won't. So getting back to bringing this full circle, I've had clients where we get more than fair market value, an offer, and one spouse will not sign the spousal consent. And so in one case, it was actually the one where I said the guy interfered with the showing instructions with my staff, and she had moved out and the wife was living at her parents' house. So what happened was she had a family law lawyer that was just running the billable. She said, I'm going to be bankrupt. I can't do this. And the lawyer was doing nothing for her. So I said, so-and-so, I'm not going to badmouth that lawyer, but I can tell you, I can recommend a lawyer that will do a lot better for you. And she said, but you can't switch lawyers. I said, you absolutely can. Educated her how, helped her do it, referred her to a much better lawyer who didn't care about billable hours, cared about the quickest, most equitable, fair settlement in the most reasonable amount of time. And so I refer her to this lawyer, and she says, and he sends me messages, they're going to their 8th or 9th settlement conference. So before it goes to court, lawyers will often try to reach a settlement with the other lawyer and, the two parties. And she said, every time we have a settlement conference, which costs me X dollars, he, in this case was a he, throws a curveball at a left field that makes no sense whatsoever. And I said to the lawyer, and the lawyer said, Michael, if I go to court and force this, it's going to cost her $8,000 for a day in court, and I'm trying to save her money. And I said to the lawyer, I admire your integrity, but 8 settlement conferences has cost her more than $8,000. When you're dealing with a narcissist, I said, here are all of his characteristics. Here is what I've dealt with. Absolutely, try once or twice to settle. You have to do that in the best interest of your client. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, the reason that something illogical comes out of left field every day is because they don't need to make sense. They just need to keep control over you. And so to sum it up, the narcissist does not want the sale to close, because once that's the final nail in the proverbial coffin in a divorce. The client I had that put crayons on the wall and train tracks on the floor, the client I had that interfered with show, they were all not the income earners. They were the ones where their wives either made more money or father offered more money as gifts, whatever it was, they were living for free, and they were controlling of their wife in these scenarios. Wow. And so as soon as the house is sold and we're that much closer to a settlement, I can't stick it to you. I can't control you anymore. They will spend less time fighting or negotiating or arguing over custody and financial settlement than the sale of the house, because that's where the most money comes from. And once the sale is done, we've cut ties, the nails in the coffin. I have no control over you anymore.
Right.
So that's where narcissism comes. That's how you can recognize narcissism. And some things I've learned about negotiating with narcissists, and how they interfere with the sale of the house.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, again, it takes someone that's skilled. You've obviously had an interest in guiding your clients. So you took extra education to understand it so that it equips you. And I also admire you for the fact of, also educating lawyers if they don't have that particular skill set to guide them so that they can be more effective in, in their work with your clients as well. So again, I admire you for that. Well, I have one final question. Is there a difference when you market or list a home, like just, a couple that wants to buy another home versus a couple that is going through the divorce process? Is there a difference?
Yes. Aside from the legal, the narcissist, all of that stuff, in terms of simply selling the house, marketing the listing, very, very often when a house is listed for sale, you'll see a sign on the lawn for sale. And some realtors will send postcards to the area in case a neighbor's thinking of selling or wants to know that the house is for sale. Maybe they know somebody that wants to live nearby. Just listed postcards or just sold postcards. Some agents will knock on the neighbor's doors. I'm listing the house down the street. Do you know anybody that wants to live in the area? Are you thinking of selling things? Like, we've all seen and heard that. In divorce, very often you don't want your neighbors to know yet, especially when there are kids. So in one particular case, we prepare the house. I have my stagers come in. We do everything we need to do. Signs installed on the lawn midday. They come home with their kids from school, and their kids were, tender age, younger, and one kid just loses it, because it becomes real. This is their house. This is their safe place. Now, they're eventually going to have to deal with moving, but there are ways that parents and therapists, coaches, things like that can gradually acclimatize children to the change. But coming home and seeing the sign on the lawn was traumatic. Yeah. So many of my divorce sales, we don't let neighbors know. When neighbors ask, why are they selling? Because they want to move, not because of divorce. So that's part of negotiating, is when people, just because someone asks you a question doesn't mean you have to answer it if it divulges confidential information. They
Mhm.
want to be closer to their grandparents. They want to be in a different school zone. They've decided for a change. Not my place to tell you why they're moving.
Yep, that makes
Um,
sense.
right? But so many of the houses I've sold are without marketing in the area, without a sign on the lawn, which, by the way, doesn't make it any harder to sell the house, but it's just be paying attention to the specific needs of specific clients, because everybody is different. And
Hmm.
that's the key to understanding people, whether it's negotiating skills, marketing skills, sales skills, or just doing good in this world. There's no two divorces the same. There's no two real estate transactions the same. It's understanding people and customizing all of your solutions to make the best experience for the client.
Hmm. Wow. I am so grateful that we chatted. I did not realize all the different, I mean, and I know you said you were only highlighting 5 issues and we covered a few other
I had to miss it.
areas. I know I did not realize the gamut of potential issues that
Mhm,
you would be dealing with in your work.
mhm,
What I did hear over and over and over again is you're caring about your clients, you're wanting the best outcome. And I know in your postings that I've seen where you have, stated, we just finished selling, we negotiated a win-win. I know you're about a win-win, and it's a win-win for everybody.
mhm,
So I know that where you're coming from, and having heard all the again, the skill, the wisdom, the experience that you bring into your work and into every situation, especially when it comes with divorce clients. Like
Well, thank you.
I'm amazed at your skill and wisdom experience. And
Thank you.
I also, honor you for, everything you stand for, because again, I see what you're doing is really looking after the well-being, and not just in the sale, but it's
Mhm,
the well-being of the family. It's the well-being of the couple.
mhm,
Doing your best to keep the stress levels low, managing the flow of, emotion or information. Like, you've looked at every different area to
mhm,
have things go as smoothly as possible,
mhm,
in your area
mhm,
and of expertise. And again, that impacts people's well-being on
mhm.
all areas of life.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
anyways, again, thank you so much for your time and
Thank
for
you.
sharing your wisdom. For those of you that have tuned in, we had a really lovely conversation. I mean, the information that was shared was just amazing. Um, you know, there are a lot of different facets when going through the divorce, but we also want to make sure that we take care of our health and well-being. So do make sure you choose wisely. If you have to, listen to this recording again, because Michael has shared so much information, and reach out to Michael, because he is someone that will definitely look out for you. So again, my name is, oh, actually, I forgot. Michael, how can we reach you if when we wish to contact you? I almost forgot about that.
Just open your window and say, "Hey, Michael." Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, you can. Well, email is always uh, good to set up a time to chat,
Mhm.
because I'm usually with clients. So email is Mike at shusterrealestate.com,
Okay.
or Mike at moveinontario.ca might be easier to type out.
Mhm.
My direct phone number, 416-414-0554. And, to your very last point there, like I said earlier, um, lawyers are paid by the hour, therapists are paid by the hour. But if you want some preliminary advice or guidance, please feel free to call me, because I don't charge by the hour, and I'm happy to help.
Mhm. Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So what I'll do is I will record in writing, in the
Mhm.
description, your contact information, so it'll be easier for individuals to actually see it. I know you've mentioned it, but I'll make sure that it's written out as well. So thank you for tuning in. Again, my name is Sandra Corrado of Next Level Consulting, where we help you with your wellness and fitness, and in particular, women that have burnt out or in life-altering situations. We help you move forward in a conscious way and in all 7 areas of life. So thank you for tuning in. Until next time.